So the first question is about Lama Zopa Rinpoche, and he's a very special teacher for you. So could you please tell us about his qualities and how you discovered him? What was the process of discovering him as a teacher for you, and why is it a special opportunity for Russian Buddhists to spend some retreat with him?
Okay. So my own history with Lama Zopa Rinpoche is that I met him in 1996, yes. I had met the Dharma through another organization, Sogyo Rinpoche's organization, Rigpa. And then in 1996, I began attending teachings at the FPMT Center in San Francisco. And Venerable Rabina Korten, who has also been to Russia, was my main teacher initially at that center. And then I had heard about the master's program that Lama Yeshe and Lama Zopa had envisioned happening later in 1996. I had heard about this program, 7-year study program that was going to take place in Pomaya, Italy, at the Istituto Lama Tsongkhapa. And I was very interested in doing this. So it was around November of 1996 when I heard about that program. And it was very funny because about 1 week later, I heard that Lama Zopa was coming to our center. And I thought, well, here's this wonderful Lama who I'd never met before, but I have the perfect opportunity to ask him if this is what I should do, because I felt very much inclined to do it, but I wasn't sure that that was going to be an opportunity that I should do. Anyway. So what I did was I was able to, after the teaching that he gave at our center in December, just a few weeks later, I went up to him and asked him, please Rinpoche, I'm very much interested in going to the master's program. Is this the most beneficial thing for me to do? And Lama Zopa, he took out his mala, and they do sometimes a divination on their mala. And they just grab it, I guess, at 2 points, and then they go in finger by finger. And if their fingers touch, if there's no bead in between, then it's one answer. And if there's a bead in between, then it's a different answer. But anyway, he does this, and he looks at me and he goes, yes, very good for you to go. And I said, thank you, Rinpoche, I will go. That was my first encounter with Rinpoche. So I pretty much entrusted him with making a decision about 7 years of my life and what I was going to do with my life. So I had a very great confidence from the beginning that he was very heavy with qualities. He had many qualities. I didn't get a lot out of the teaching that I sat in the first time because I found it difficult to understand his English. But I did get some pretty amazing things out of that and was able to make this connection with Rinpoche. So Rinpoche, during my time in the master's program, those 7 years, was somebody who I didn't see so much because I was mostly working with my main teacher, Geshe Jampi Gyatso. But Rinpoche was always behind the scenes and always helping to guide me in some way. And then after my teacher passed away in 2007, I was able to make stronger connection with Rinpoche then because I was back in the United States, especially when he started doing the retreats in North Carolina, what are called the Light of the Path retreats. And the Light of the Path retreats started off as 2-week retreats, and there was an original vision of doing 5 years in a row, 2 weeks each year. And then Rinpoche manifested the stroke in 2011, so there was an interruption in the continuity of those retreats. So we had one in 2009, 2010, and then there was a break until 2014, and then 2016, 2017. So there have been 5 now, but Rinpoche is even doing another one next year. And so there are now 4 weeks or so. They've doubled in size. But doing retreat with Rinpoche is really an amazing opportunity, and I really am glad that to hear that he will be coming here to Russia to offer you the opportunity to be with him and retreat. His retreats are not easy sometimes. They're very strenuous for many people. They involve a schedule that can be a bit overwhelming, depending upon how the retreat is structured. But the retreats at the Light of the Path, for example, we begin quite early in the morning at around 5 o'clock in the morning, 5 to 5:30 I think is when we usually start. And then we do precepts and prostrations, and then we do Lama Chopa, the Guru Puja. And that continues after breakfast. Even though we're doing precepts, we do breakfast and lunch for the days of precepts throughout the retreat. Then we reconvene later in the morning, and then we have also an afternoon discussion group, and then the afternoon session with Rinpoche is at about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And then Rinpoche teaches till about dinner time, and then those who didn't take precepts have dinner. Everyone else gets a short break, and then we continue in the evening at around 7:30. And then we have teachings with Rinpoche until about 11. And so we don't get much opportunity for sleep, but sleep is not so important when you're around Rinpoche, because Rinpoche's qualities allow you to be sustained without too much sleep, in my opinion. It's very easy to be on retreat without much sleep. For me, Rinpoche always kind of exhibits this manifestation of just being totally concerned with others. And whenever I'm in his presence, I never get the feeling that he's got any kind of self-centeredness at all. You know, he's always looking to benefit others, always wanting to be of use to them. I find that to be the most amazing quality. To be in his presence is so wonderful, especially for a longer period of time in retreat. But when Rinpoche teaches, of course, he also touches on many different subjects, and I find most useful his teachings on Guru devotion and how we need to be very much in line with what our gurus wish for us, the whole logic of why we can relate to our gurus in the way that we do, the opportunity we have to benefit from our gurus. All of this is quite amazing when he teaches on it. But he also teaches quite frequently on emptiness, and his emptiness teachings are very, very tasty. They have an experiential quality that I find really, really beneficial for my mind, to hear teachings from him on emptiness. So as I've gotten closer to Rinpoche through these retreats, I've even begun to develop more of a personal relationship with Rinpoche. Initially, I didn't consider myself his student right from the beginning. I knew I was very close to him, but I always felt like he was directing me, to my teacher in Italy. And once my teacher in Italy was gone, then I wanted to have a continued relationship with Guru, and Rinpoche was there and has been playing that role for me now. So I've even relied upon him for personal advice, and Rinpoche has given me advice about what I'm doing, for example, right now by being in Russia, teaching at other centers. This was something Rinpoche asked me to do. So I feel very privileged to have Rinpoche in my life. I think he's quite an amazing being with amazing qualities. So if you have any opportunity, even to spend a few days in retreat with Rinpoche, I think you can benefit greatly.
The retreat that will be held in Russia will be dedicated to Avalokiteshvara, the deity of compassion. And could you please explain why in Buddhism compassion and bodhicitta plays such a major role?
Okay. So I think it's great that will be the main topic, this kind of Mani retreat where you do recitation of the mantra of Chenrezig, of Avalokiteshvara. Compassion is really quite important in terms of the idea that if we are to attain Buddhahood, if we are to go to that result, we really need to have very, very deep compassion, a compassion that is not just about being moved by the suffering of other beings and wanting them to be free from it from a distance, but it's about being the agent of freeing others from suffering. In fact, we call this great compassion in Buddhism, because great compassion entails taking personal responsibility to protect sentient beings from suffering. So it is very important to work with Chenrezig, the mantra and practices around that Buddha, because that Buddha symbolizes the compassion that we have in a seed form within ourselves that can be manifested into that state of Buddhahood. In the state of Buddhahood, one is totally dedicated to relieving the suffering of others and is fully qualified to do that, has all of the skills and abilities and knowledge to be able to benefit others directly. Whereas we now might have some compassion for others that maybe isn't as strong, certainly, as what it could be, but we certainly lack the ability. We don't have the capacity to help others to the degree that we would like. Lama Yeshe, in one of his last teachings, which was on bodhicitta, he said that one of the most painful things about our existence is that we cannot help others to the degree that we would like to. And the answer to that dilemma is bodhicitta, is this compassionate practice of wanting to become a Buddha for the sake of others, wanting to dedicate oneself to the welfare of all beings, so that one can eventually become a Buddha and do that completely, do that fully, do that most perfectly. So the practice of Chenrezig, Avalokiteshvara, this is a very important one for us to engage in, to awaken that compassion, to develop it more deeply. It's through that great compassion that we then formulate this mind of bodhicitta, that is the intention to become a Buddha, to be fully awakened, so that we can benefit all beings. So I think this is wonderful to have the opportunity, certainly, to do this practice. And do you need any more on that? Is that good enough?
So for those people who are not very much familiar with Buddhism, what is happiness according to Buddhism?
Okay, that's a good question. So what is happiness according to Buddhism? I mean, we could say that there are different levels of happiness, and again, all beings have a quest for happiness, a desire to be happy, to find the causes of happiness. We could essentially divide happiness into two different categories, what we might call temporal happiness, or the more immediate happiness that we experience in our conditioned existence, which is what most people only know as happiness, is that experience that we have sometimes from sense objects, sometimes from other experiences in our lives, but it's very transitory and it really doesn't ultimately satisfy. Nonetheless, we can say that temporal happiness is needed to some degree, because if we don't have that, then frequently we lack the leisure or the opportunity to use this life meaningfully if we are not dealing with some level of comfort and happiness in our life. So that would be one level of happiness. But the more profound level of happiness that we're seeking, we would call ultimate happiness. And by ultimate happiness, we mean a state where we have transcended that conditionality, where we no longer are conditioned to only experience a happiness that is based on these different conditions of having these objects, having these things in our lives, these experiences. This is a more profound level of happiness or well-being that we can find within ourselves. So this level of happiness can only be achieved through deeper practice, and in Buddhism we would say through the practice of the Dharma. It's the happiness of Dharma. It's what we are able to attain when we turn our minds towards the teachings of the Buddha and begin to experience deeper levels of contentment and peace within ourselves, because we are not conditioned in this way to seek them, those experiences from outside of ourselves. So this is a form of inner happiness, even, we might call it. And of course that happiness is at its greatest stages when we generate the well-being that comes when nirvana is attained, when we have removed all of the negative tendencies in the mind and developed that peace that is within our minds, which again we've never known. We don't know what that experience is like, so it's difficult for me to describe what that experience might be like. But then even what they call the bliss of Buddhahood, which is when we've gone beyond our own personal nirvana and we've actually attained the state of complete enlightenment, and a state where we are abiding in unparalleled bliss, unparalleled happiness. And again, it wouldn't be comparable to what we know of as happiness right now, because that happiness is conditioned. That happiness is not something that is sustained without any need for going outside of ourselves. So I would say that would be the more traditional way of looking at happiness within the Buddhist tradition, is understanding that there is both temporal and ultimate happiness. And while temporal happiness is beneficial, the real goal is ultimate happiness of nirvana if one is practicing the individual path, or of complete Buddhahood if one is practicing the more universal path of the Bodhisattva towards Buddhahood.